អាហ្នឹងវារូបភាពពីទូរូបភាពឃើញអាហ្នឹងប៉ះជើងប៉ះអីហ៎ទូ Hello ទូលឺហ៎ច្បាស់ហើយអូខេអញ្ចឹងអូខេចាប់សុខបើក screen អូលេអាចចាប់ដើមអូខេ Welcome to our think tank 2022 public lecture series. This month we have a great honor and pleasure to have Professor Lee Jae-hyun, who is a senior fellow at the ASEAN Institute for Public Policy. This is one of the well-known and influential think tanks in the Republic of Korea. He also a member of the advisory group for the Ministry of Unifications. So Dr. Lee today will share with us his perspective on the ASEAN and the peace process on the Korean Peninsula. As we all know, Korean Peninsula is very important to regional peace and security. Peace and security on the Korean Peninsula are intrinsically connected with peace and security in the Asia Pacific. And ASEAN have been playing some role to maintain peace and stability, as well as to promote peaceful reunification or denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. So today, Professor Lee will share with us his perspective of the role of ASEAN, which is one of the most successful regional organizations after the European Union. And what are the advantages? What are the roles of ASEAN, and what are the obstacles and challenges that ASEAN is facing in promoting the peace process on the Korean Peninsula? So I would like to invite Professor Lee to share with us your perspective. Please, the floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind introduction. It's very my great honor to be in this lecture series, and I'm really thank to Dr. Ching Banaris for having me here today. As I introduced, my topic today is peace process in the Korean Peninsula and the role of ASEAN. And before I start, I will share my slide first, so that you can understand what I'm saying better. And as you can see in my background, I'm in Phnom Penh at the moment. It would be great if you if I have any audience in person, but this is we are living in era of technology, so I can have more audience in this way. Anyway, as you can see from the slide that I shared, the topic of my today's lecture is ASEAN and the peace in the Korean Peninsula. Under this topic, I have 5 different issues to deal with. First, I have to introduce recent development in the Korean Peninsula. Especially what's going on between North Korea and South Korea, and what has been South Korea's sort of a strategy toward North Korea and the peace process in the Korean Peninsula over the few different administrations. And in the second part, I will introduce some interesting facts and current status of ASEAN and North Korea relations. And individually, ASEAN member states have some kind of relations with North Korea. Probably this linkage between ASEAN member state and North Korea means that ASEAN and AMS have particular role in the building peace in the Korean Peninsula. And the third part is ASEAN and the Korean Peninsula issue. Here in this third part, I will talk about the ASEAN's role in the Korean Peninsula peace building in the past, and what kind of factor draws ASEAN to Korean Peninsula issue, or what sort of a factor pushes ASEAN away from the Korean Peninsula peace issue. And the fourth part, ASEAN's role and opportunities, I divided this topic into three different areas. First, foreign policy and politics. Second, economic engagement. And third, domestic governance reform in North Korea. And unlike other surrounding countries of North Korea, ASEAN occupies very interesting position when it comes to North Korea's change and opening up and reform. So I will elaborate further on this topic here. And last but not the least, there are roles that South Korea has to do to engage ASEAN countries and ASEAN as a group in the Korean Peninsula issue. So this last part is pretty much like my suggestion for South Korean government. Okay, let's start with recent development. As you know, you are probably informed the situation in the Korean Peninsula at the moment. There has been a dramatic turnaround in the previous government to this under Yoon Suk-yeol government. As all we remember, under Moon Jae-in administration, which started in 2017, the situation in the Korean Peninsula was really, really difficult. As you can remember, between former US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, there was a war of words between these two figures. So many people thought that in South Korea, we don't really worry about this kind of, war of words. But from outside, many people believe that, oh yeah, in Korean Peninsula, the war is just around the corner between North and South, or even between the North Korea and the United States. The situation in 2017 there was really high tension in the Korean Peninsula. But the Moon Jae-in government's basic approach to North Korea was basically peaceful coexistence with North Korea and engagement with North Korea. You have to notice this peaceful coexistence is different from reunification. In the many former Korean administrations pursued reunification. And after 70 years of division in the Korean Peninsula, reunification is not that easy. So the Moon Jae-in government first goal was to establish peaceful coexistence between North and South. And we spent, say, a decade or 2 decades with some kind of North and South exchange and interaction. Then we can get unified again. That was the basic idea of Moon Jae-in administration. And after this high tension in 2017, the sudden and really dramatic change visited Korean Peninsula in 2018. Early 2018, there was Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. Surprisingly enough, North Korea sent their delegation to Pyeongchang, and things started to change. And after that, as we all know, there was North Korea, United States summit in Singapore. And then in 2019, another summit in Hanoi, which ended up as a failure. After this Hanoi summit, there was sort of a suspension of North and South interaction and North and the United States interaction. And after that, in a few months' time, North Korea slowly started provocations and preparations and all that. And there was a lot of talks, a lot of prediction that North Korea will test another nuclear weapon. In that context, a new Yoon administration came in. And as you know, the Moon Jae-in administration was from more liberal section of Korean society, but Yoon Suk-yeol administration is basically conservative government. And as soon as the Yoon Suk-yeol government came in, the government announced its policy toward North Korea, which is titled Audacious Initiative. It's very simple. If North Korea gives up its nuclear weapons and North Korea comes out to the discussion table, then South Korea will extend its economic help to North Korea. But in fact, Yoon Suk-yeol government basic line of strategy to North Korea is peace in the Korean Peninsula by the overwhelming power. We have to overwhelm North Korea with the power to deter North Korea's provocation and nuclear weapon development. And after post-Hanoi provocations, all dialogues and contacts between North and South suspended. So until today, there's no interaction going on between North and South. And these two administrations, Moon Jae-in and Yoon Suk-yeol administrations, are sort of a miniature of South Korea's policy toward North Korea. In the previous administrations, from Kim Dae-jung, Kim administration, Roh Moo-hyun administration, Moon Jae-in administration, these are all from the liberal section of Korean society, and their basic policy was engagement with North Korea. Hey, let's start dialogue, and we can coexist. But on the other hand, Lee Myung-bak administration, Park Geun-hye administration, and Yoon Suk-yeol administration, these are all conservative administrations. Their basic strategy is if North Korea denuclearizes first, and then South Korea can make assistance to North Korea economically. So for these three administrations, deterrence comes first, then dialogue. So there's a kind of progressive and conservative roller coasters of South Korea's policy toward North Korea, and also South Korea's strategy for Korean Peninsula peace. That is basic summary of what's going on and what sort of strategy that South Korea has adopted toward North Korea in the previous 2 decades or 3 decades, if you like. Now, I'm moving on to the existing relations between ASEAN and North Korea. As you can see on your right side, there are countries, ASEAN member countries, from Brunei to Vietnam and South Korea and North Korea. These numbers indicate the year that South Korea and North Korea established bilateral diplomatic relations, which for South Korea, the earliest one was with the Philippines, and the latest one was probably with Brunei. And you can see some two numbers, for example, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. It's got its own twist. First, South Korea first made a diplomatic tie with Cambodia in 1970, and after that, Cambodia had a communist regime, and South Korea and Cambodia cut their diplomatic relations, and it resumed in 1997. The Laos was pretty much the same, and Vietnam, we had the same situation with Vietnam. And Myanmar is quite interesting case. South Korea made a relation with Myanmar in 1975, and there was broken ties with Myanmar sometime after in the mid-1980s, because some of you probably remember what happened in 1983 in Yangon. There was an explosion at the Aung San Mausoleum, and some high-ranking officers died, and it was done by North Korea. So as a protest, South Korea cut its diplomatic relation with Myanmar, but it resumed again in 1989. North Korea, because North Korea has a communist regime, didn't have that kind of breaking relation with some Southeast Asian countries, but as Myanmar was quite furious against North Korea because of the bombing that I just mentioned. These two countries, Myanmar and North Korea, cut their diplomatic relations after the blast in Yangon, but the relation resumed in 2007. And individual Southeast Asian countries have a very interesting bilateral relation with North Korea. For example, Cambodia. Cambodia used to have party-to-party relation with North Korea Communist Party when there was a communist regime in Cambodia. And probably some of you know this fact, but the King Sihanouk before had a cordial relation with North Korean leader Kim Il-sung. And when King Sihanouk fled Cambodia to take shelter outside, Kim Il-sung provided that protection for the King Sihanouk. And from that, they developed their friendship. And that is probably, as you can see in the small picture on your down right side, Kim Il-sung Boulevard, as in Phnom Penh, if I'm not wrong. And with Laos, still party-to-party relations going on between Laos and North Korea. And Indonesia offers another interesting story. Former Indonesian leader Sukarno had close relation with Kim Il-sung, the North Korean leader, and they met in the non-aligned movement. And it was quite an interesting story. Both North Korea and Indonesia issued commemorative stamp on Kim Il-sung and Sukarno, and even Mr. Sukarno, former President Sukarno, named orchid as a Kim Il-sung. And this flower, as you can see, still decorates the grave of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-un. Then between Myanmar and North Korea, there was suspicion that Myanmar was cooperating with North Korea to develop nuclear weapons. They provide some site for this technological advancement of North Korean nuclear weapons. But I don't know if that is true or not, because it was not really proven. And between Singapore, Thailand, on the one hand, and North Korea, there is some trade relations. Singapore and Thailand trade bit with to North Korea for mainly for consumer goods, and Vietnam has, of course, party-to-party relation with North Korea. And it's interesting, North Korea denies this fact, but during the Vietnam War, North Korea sent some military advisors and pilots to help out Vietnam's fight against North Korea. So they still maintain interesting relations. These are the existing relations between ASEAN member countries and North Korea. Now I move on to the major part, ASEAN and Korean Peninsula. What draws ASEAN to Korean Peninsula issue, and what pushes ASEAN away from Korean Peninsula? And in fact, ASEAN has done a great job so far for the peace building in the Korean Peninsula. And as you know, ASEAN Regional Forum, led by, of course, ASEAN countries, offered a venue for North and South dialogue many times. I mean, it's basically South Korea and North Korea's fault that we didn't really utilize this venue called the ASEAN Regional Forum. Instead, North and South were sort of fighting each other at the ASEAN Regional Forum to put their own agendas into chairman's statement almost every year. And within Southeast Asia, individual countries pulled in different directions when it comes to Korean Peninsula peace issue, because individual Southeast Asian countries have their own different interests, national interests, and different depths of relation with North Korea. So it's a bit complicated, and also ASEAN as a group have different had used to have different attitude toward Korean Peninsula issue. Basically, if there is a dialogue and interaction going on and detente between North and South, ASEAN is more easier to engage in Korean Peninsula issue. So when there is North and South dialogue going on, ASEAN countries individually and collectively engaged more with the Korean Peninsula issue. They made a more active response to what's going on in the Korean Peninsula. Hey, you guys, you are doing very well and keep going. That was basically Southeast Asian countries' message to North and South when they talk. But if there's a tension between North and South, the ASEAN countries rather keep quiet, and they usually have a more reserved response toward what's going on in the Korean Peninsula. Probably ASEAN countries don't want to get involved in themselves in the context of tension in the Korean Peninsula. So there are push and pull factors. We can divide a few things into these two categories. Factors that driving ASEAN away from the Korean Peninsula issue. The first, different ASEAN member countries have different bilateral relations with two Koreas. And because they have simultaneous relations and diplomatic ties with the two Koreas, ASEAN usually wants to keep neutral position between North and South. This pushes ASEAN countries away to make more proactive stance toward the Korean Peninsula issue. And the second, if you look at the Korean Peninsula issue, the basic nature of the problem is it is a kind of a clash of major powers. China on the one hand, the United States on the other. Between North and South, it is basically and fundamentally between North and South. But at the same time, the US strategy and Chinese strategy clashes in the Korean Peninsula. So many Southeast Asian countries probably think that is there anything we can do in the Korean Peninsula? The ASEAN countries are small. We are developing countries. Even if we engage in the Korean Peninsula peace process, there's not much we can do because it's basically superpowers issue. And on the other hand, some others may think that there could be a potential risk if ASEAN countries engage in this troublesome issue called the Korean Peninsula. If some Southeast Asian countries strongly support South Korea, and it means they are towing the line with US strategy in the Korean Peninsula, probably these countries may have to face some kind of unfavorable response from China and vice versa. If you support North Korea hard, and it means they are subscribing Chinese strategy in the Korean Peninsula, that means they have to face some kind of disadvantage coming from probably US and South Korea. And when ASEAN countries debate Korean Peninsula issue, there could be potential internal division. Some countries may say, we have to remain neutral on Korean Peninsula issue. Some countries may say we have to support South Korea. Some may, even small part, may say, it is better to protect North Korea because North Korea is a smaller guys. So like South China's issue, this Korean Peninsula issue may cause some internal division potentially within ASEAN countries. On the other hand, there are factors getting ASEAN interested in Korean Peninsula issue. First, maintaining regional stability for ASEAN's interest. As you can see in the 1997 economic crisis, we all remember it started from Thailand and moved on to Malaysia, Indonesia, and South Korea. From the outside perspective, Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia is not divided. It's one big group of region. So if something happens in Northeast Asia, it definitely will affect the stability in Southeast Asian countries. I'm not talking about domestic stability, but the region as a whole may sound very unstable, and it deters, it blocks trade and investment coming from outside. So the peaceful Korean Peninsula is the interest of ASEAN countries. And at the same time, increasingly Southeast Asian countries' voice, they want a bigger voice for the regional security issues. ASEAN centrality, AOIP are all the examples of ASEAN wants to have a bigger voice in regional security and strategic issues. For that, ASEAN countries have to be more proactive in regional flashpoint. That may drive ASEAN countries to get more interest in Korean Peninsula. And of course, Southeast Asia's trade relations, investment relation with Korea is not small. Southeast Asian countries combined is #2 trading partner and one of the biggest investment destination for South Korea. So if there's something happens, instability happens in the Korean Peninsula, it will definitely affect the trade and investment coming from South Korea to Southeast Asian countries. So looking at this kind of dangers, there's a good reason for ASEAN countries to get more interested and involved in the Korean Peninsula issue. Okay, now I move on to the another important section of my lecture, the ASEAN's role. What kind of role ASEAN can do in the Korean Peninsula? Honestly and realistically, for denuclearization and for the first step of peace building, there is not much that ASEAN countries can do. As I mentioned, it is basically between North and South, and also this North and South compromise has to be endorsed by surrounding superpowers. What is important for ASEAN countries is after building peace. So all these political and economic and governance issues has got the condition. In the political area, I say once North Korea diplomatically opens up, then there's a great role that ASEAN countries can do, and also I believe has to do. When North Korea opens up politically to the international community, North Korea needs to be a part of regional community first, and then global community second. And within this region, either in the Pacific, East Asia, or Asia Pacific, it is the ASEAN that has the key for regional community. As you can see, the ASEAN centrality, the concept of ASEAN centrality is exercised in regional multilateral frameworks like ARF, ASEAN +3, East Asia Summit, ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus, and blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. And all these regional multilateral institutions are led by ASEAN. If you want, be a member of these multilateral institutions, you have to get you have to be very close to ASEAN countries, and you have to get the stamp from ASEAN countries. So that means the ASEAN has the final say if reformed North Korea can be a part of these regional multilateral institutions. So ASEAN, when North Korea diplomatically opens up, then ASEAN has to invite and guide North Korea in ASEAN Plus 3, probably East Asia Summit, ADMM Plus, probably RCEP. That's really great contribution, potentially great contribution for ASEAN countries that makes North Korea's reform irreversible. And from North Korean perspective, they may feel very comfortable when ASEAN invite North Korea to this international and regional community. North Korea is very proud people. And if South Korea say something, or US advice, Japan gives a comment, maybe the pride that North Korea has does not allow North Korea to listen to those countries like South Korea, United States, Japan. But there's a high chance for North Korea to listen to ASEAN. So that's what I mean by North Korea's comfort level. ASEAN has got very unique and interesting position to talk to North Korea, and it is the ASEAN that can invite North Korea to regional community. First, North Korea has to be a dialogue partner and part of ASEAN Plus 3, East Asia Summit, ADMM Plus, and beyond. That's the role that ASEAN can do to eternalize the peace and reform of North Korea. So at this point, ASEAN's constructive engagement with North Korea is required. The second, economic chance, the ASEAN's chance from the economic side. Again, there's a condition. Once North Korea economically opens up, then it is the ASEAN that has to lead North Korea to the international economy. When North Korea opens up, probably North Korea wants economic development and growth. Everyone wants that. And for North Korea's growth and development, North Korea has to do more active trade with other countries. They have to get foreign direct investment coming from whole range of countries. But I can't imagine the Tesla, the Google, those kind of companies wouldn't invest in North Korea immediately. There's no infrastructure. There's no technology whatsoever in North Korea. So these more developed Western US companies have a very slim chance to invest in North Korea. And North Korea cannot digest that kind of investment coming from US or European countries. So it is ideal for ASEAN small and medium industries to invest in North Korea. They can fully utilize natural resource and human resource in North Korea. It does not need high technology. These companies, these small and medium companies from Southeast Asia do not need high technology or highly skilled labor. So they have a better chance to make a success in North Korea. And it is good for Southeast Asian countries. Some countries are experiencing middle income trap at the moment, and they need some new start, new boost to overcome middle income trap. And those countries can invest in North Korea. And also some ASEAN member countries can be a model for North Korean economic reform and growth. For example, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, all experienced economic transition from centralized economy to the market-oriented economy. And when North Korea economically opens up, they need the same. These three countries, these three Mekong countries, all experienced downside and upside of this economic reform, and they have got a lot lesson to teach to newly born North Korean economy. Once ASEAN countries' investment and trade flows in North Korea, and when they build strong economic relations, this economic relation will make the opening up of North Korea irreversible. Once Southeast Asian capitals and factories and companies are rooted in North Korea, it is not easy for North Korean regime to just shut down their border. So it makes the opening up of North Korea irreversible. The next point I would like to make is domestic governance issue. North Korea is so closed society, and they have been cut out from the international community for a long time, for more than 70 years. Probably in this age of information, North Korean leadership and elites knows what's going on outside and how the things working in other society, but the ordinary people don't know what's going on outside. So once North Korea start domestic reform, and once North Korea opens up to the international community, they have to do something about their domestic governance issues. Domestic governance of North Korea needs to reborn. They need innovation domestically. There are a lot of human rights issues and human security issues, environmental issues, poverty, and to get economic assistance from outside, to get foreign direct investment from outside, the domestic laws and institutions need to be reformed. The ASEAN countries are best positioned to lead North Korea's domestic reform and make advice to North Korea. As I mentioned in the economic section, the ASEAN member countries have their own experience of economic transition. Plus, they have reformed their domestic governance. And what sort of institutions, what sort of laws, what sort of governance system is required for the economic development, to have better relation with outside countries? North Korea needs these ASEAN's inputs. Again, North Korea is more comfortable with Southeast Asian countries than other surrounding bigger countries. So given that, it's not really about peace building process itself, but once there is a change of a situation, changing situation in North Korea, and it really opens up, and it really gives up nuclear weapons, then it's the ASEAN's showtime in North Korea and Korean Peninsula. You've got a lot to offer for North Korea. But this ASEAN's role is meaningless if South Korea doesn't do its part. The South Korea has to do to get Southeast Asian countries more interested in Korean Peninsula issue. First of all, South Korean government has to share information. South Korean government has to provide information on what's really going on in the Korean Peninsula to Southeast Asian countries. So the Korean government has to get Southeast Asian countries informed so that they have a better say and better role in Korean Peninsula issues. And it's very important to get Southeast Asian countries on the same page with South Korea when it comes to information on the situation of North Korea, the situation of South Korea's policy toward North Korea, and also the dynamics, the big power dynamics surrounding Korean Peninsula. The second is give and take. What I mean give and take is when Southeast Asian countries are more committed to the Korean Peninsula, South Korea has to show its interest in Southeast Asian security and strategic issue. Probably South Korea first have to be more interested in ASEAN security and strategic issues. So Korea has to increase its role and contribution to ASEAN security and strategic security and stability. For example, South China Sea, ASEAN's non-traditional and human security issues, South Korea has to make better contribution, more investment, and more cooperation in these issues. When South Korea do its part regarding ASEAN security issues, then ASEAN will pay back with more interest in Korean Peninsula. And plus, a better and deeper overall Korean-ASEAN relations will definitely make ASEAN countries more interested and more concerned about Korean Peninsula. And last but not the least, there should be a formal and proper invitation of ASEAN countries. In the past administration, Korea always talked to Southeast Asia, hey, you guys, you have to support South Korea's position in the Korean Peninsula. But when it comes to real discussion, real debate on Korean Peninsula issue, at best, Southeast Asian countries have been just the observer, not a stakeholder. So Korea has to provide ASEAN or ASEAN member countries a legitimate place as a stakeholder in the table of North and South or six-party talk and that kind of venue. We have to provide ASEAN a chair to be a legitimate stakeholder. That's these three: information sharing, give and take, invitation. South Korean government has to remember this part. If South Korea wants ASEAN countries to get more involved in Korean Peninsula peace building process. Okay, I guess this is probably the end of my talk, and I already spent around 50 minutes. And if there's any question or comments, I'm more than happy to make a response. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. Very comprehensive and insightful, and also a sense of optimism in your presentation. Perhaps because you're the member of the Korean unification. So I think your view is more optimistic and very positive, looking forward. And you talk a lot on the bilateral relation between each member state of ASEAN vis-a-vis North and South Korea. Very interesting. I think we need more detail, perhaps analysis on the bilateral relation between Southeast Asian country and North Korea. Actually, our common friend, a Malaysian friend, she also edited a book volume on Southeast Asia and North Korea relation. I think you're part of that project too.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to reading that book. I also contributed a chapter on Cambodia North Korea relations.
Yep.
But of course, very difficult, to have data and evidence to tell the story. But And very interesting and very dynamics there. Now, my question is relating to how this bilateral relation can be kind of utilized to create either a collective pressure or collective opportunities vis-a-vis North Korea when we come to the role of ASEAN on the Korean Peninsula.
You mean the ASEAN
The bilateral relations that member states of Southeast Asia have with North Korea. How can we use this as a collective either leverage or opportunities to engage North Korea?
That's a very tricky question because it depends on pretty much the situation in the Korean Peninsula. For example, at the moment, there is no dialogue going on between North and South. The tension is going up. If that is the case, on the surface, both North Korea, I believe both North Korea and South Korea, they don't want to talk to each other. But you can't just keep this tension going and rising. The both North and South, on the other hand, wants to some kind of a breakthrough. And to make a breakthrough, at least North and South has to make a contact or small dialogue. But it is not easy for North and South in this tense moment to just start dialogue. Hey, let's meet tomorrow at Panmunjom. That's not impossible. There needs some kind of a bridge, some messengers between North and South, so that both North and South do not lose their faith, but sit at the table. And actually, in early 2000, former Indonesian President Megawati Soekarno Putri offered that kind of Southeast Asia's role. She visited North Korea and then South Korea and then conveyed the message of North Korea to South Korea. And she offered herself as a sort of mediator between North and South. Probably when there's a tension, some Southeast Asian countries can come out with that kind of role. I mean, you don't have to start that kind of role in open manner. You just quietly talk to North Korea and South Korean government and offer themselves, hey, you guys, it is better to sit down and talk and date and time and place. I don't know, I'm not quite familiar with that kind of secret sort of a project. So I don't know what's the standard procedure there. But anyway, other than Southeast Asia, I can't imagine any countries can do such a mediator's role between North and South. That's one of the roles that ASEAN can do at the moment.
Yeah, so I may say that ASEAN has the role as a messenger, and also a quiet diplomacy, some extent, and also a platform, right, for a political dialogue, conversation, and gradual trust building or confidence building measure, those kind of things, right? So individual ASEAN member states can play that role. Cambodia also have, for some time, have this ambition to be a bridge also between the North and the South. 2022 in February at the summit in Seoul, organized by an NGO there, Universal Peace Federation. So Prime Minister Hun Sen launched this initiative called two state toward one nation, one peninsula, one culture, and one people. So when we talk about the reunification of Korea, it's impossible to unify the two states, but we need to accept the existence of the two states, but you have toward one nation. So you are one United Nations with two states, maybe one country, two systems. and of course,
Probably like
with the one
China and
culture.
Hong Kong.
Yeah. So, is it
Yes,
possible, from your perspective, one country, two system?
I don't know. I mean, there was that kind of a proposal before, one country, two systems, like, China and Hong Kong. Um, um, Theoretically, it sounds great, but in reality, I'm not quite sure. If you look at Hong Kong and China, they say one country and two systems, but sometimes Hong Kong people, they are feared of Chinese, mainland China imposing their own system again back to Hong Kong. If we have these two system, one nation, then either South Korea or North Korea, after a few years, would feel they are marginalized, or the economically powerful country, powerful system would try to impose their system on the other. But theoretically, that is a great idea. But what under Moon Jae-in government, what they meant by peaceful coexistence, first, accept division, accept the system of two countries. And first, we denounce provocation between North and South. And then slowly start interaction between North and South. I mean, in the past 70 plus years, we started from same language, same culture, same system, same family, but we slowly drifted away from each other. Now, the language is quite different. Basic culture is quite different. Of course, political economic system is quite different, and a whole range of social manners are quite different. If you put these two systems together, suddenly there's a great problem. So peaceful coexistence for a few decades and slow interaction, and we reduce the difference between these two systems, and the unification will come naturally out of that interaction. That was the idea of peaceful coexistence before.
So yeah, I think we should not lose hope and keep experimenting, exploring perhaps a new pathway on the. I mean, we need to be innovative in a way. Keep experimenting it. Things works and not works, trial and errors. You also talk about economic dimension of the role ASEAN, right? In addition to confidence building measure, trust building platform, quiet diplomacy. So it's huge opportunity, for instance, for North Korea to open up. And one time, North Korea even sent official to Vietnam. I mean, to learn seriously, to learn about economic reform and opening up. So, but it seems it stopped now. I'm not sure about this, but it seems no following up activity. So, can you share the view on that when it comes to economic reform?
As you mentioned, there was some interest from North Korean side to develop their economy and to see what's going on in Vietnam. And Vietnam, I believe still North Korea is quite interested in Vietnamese model for their economic development. They haven't, I mean, if North Korea wants economic developments, but still wants to keep their political system, the one-party rule by the communists, then the model should come from Vietnam or Laos or some other, maybe Eastern European countries. I mean, the Eastern European countries, they made a political transition as well. But for the economic transition, the North Korea has just a few models. But Eastern Europe is too far away. They have to find some examples from nearby countries like Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Among these three countries, Laos and Cambodia, still they keep one-party regime, but economically opened up. and the market-oriented economy is working quite well. And plus, Vietnam made such an impressive economic growth. So this could be naturally a good model for North Korea. I don't think North Korea is making any serious effort to learn from Vietnamese experience, but still they keep learning from Vietnam as an option. But I don't know what's really going on and what's the real economic growth strategy for North Korea at the moment.
But you think that there's still a continuity of those usual, learning from Vietnam, right? From North Korea, still have interactions and engagement, right?
There's interactions and engagement, but I am not quite sure what is the direction of economic policy at the moment. If North Korea wants keep their economic door closed to the international community, there's nothing they can learn from Vietnamese experience. If North Korea is seriously wants to introduce some capitalist and free market elements to their economy, then they can learn from Vietnamese experience, and they will send some delegation to to Vietnam, and they will sincerely wants to learn from Vietnamese experience. And if you look at the Trump Kim Jong-un summit in Hanoi, it was the place Hanoi is very symbolic. It was not just a coincidence. For North Korea, Hanoi, Vietnam is quite a comfortable place to visit among many regional countries, because there's still party-to-party relations. At least Vietnam has the same political system as North Korea. But from the United States side, they have their own calculation, and they may believe Vietnam is one of their example. Hey, if you change your economic system like Vietnam, you can have economic development. Come and see how Vietnam has changed in the past few decades. If you know the Vietnam-US relations, Vietnam's economic reform domestically started in 1980s, but Vietnamese economy really took off when the US scrapped economic sanction to Vietnam, and that was the time when Vietnam-US trade really started. And Vietnam today is one of the countries that make big trade surplus in the US market. Probably the United States, I'm not sure it's Trump's idea or the State Department's idea, but they want to show the Vietnams today, hey, this could be North Korea's future. That was their message, I believe.
Would be, I think it would be a breakthrough if North Korean leaders, have this kind of thinking.
Yep.
Of learning from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos in terms of economic reforms, because anyway, economics determines politics. So perhaps the economic means can lead to a political resolutions or settlements or reconciliations. On bilateral relations, because I believe you're in Cambodia, right? So welcome to Cambodia, and I hope you enjoy your stay here. Yes, so on bilateral relations with Cambodia, what is your impression of the current state of Korea-Cambodia relation? I mean, Republic of Korea and Cambodia relations.
Between Korea and Cambodia, we have a lot of cooperation projects, and many are going on. Going into the Cambodia's economic development, as well as some serious human security issue, Also, Cambodia is a part of a Mekong region, and Korea. In the previous Moon Jae-in administration, there has been foreign ministers meeting between Korea and Mekong for 10 years, and then Moon Jae-in government upgraded Korea-Mekong cooperation to the summit level in 2019. So we have Korea-Mekong summit every year, and South Korea is quite sincere to deepen economic and developmental cooperation with Cambodia. But it's not just Cambodia, but as Mekong or Southeast Asian countries as a whole. These days, South Korea is quite determined to enhance digital cooperation with ASEAN countries. For some Southeast Asian countries, digital cooperation means high-tech sort of things. But for some other Southeast Asian countries, digital transformation is really important as a new momentum for economic development. As you know, ASEAN countries collectively announced the ASEAN, what is that? I forgot the name. ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Plan after COVID-19. And one of the main points of economic recovery there is digitalization. And from the digital awareness and IT education to the vocational training and also cybersecurity, there's a lot that South Korea can do for Southeast Asian countries. And I'm quite sure Cambodia is one of the target of that kind of South Korea's effort. And this new Yoon Suk-yeol government actually announced Korea ASEAN Solidarity Initiative as its approach to Southeast Asian countries, and it's got increased ODA to Southeast Asia substantially, and the government also increased the amount of Korea Mekong Cooperation Fund, and this money, I hope, is used wisely to the Mekong countries as well as Cambodia for Cambodia's economic development.
Wonderful news with the new initiative, ASEAN Korea Solidarity Initiative. It will be launched at the upcoming ASEAN Korea Summit in Indonesia.
There was announced. It was announced last year, and the government was a bit slow to show it to the audience, Southeast Asian audience. But earlier this year, the government officially produced a brochure explaining Korea ASEAN Solidarity Initiative, what it called KASI, and then it's got a few different areas of main emphasis. And one of the interesting points of the KASI is that the Korean government puts a lot of emphasis on strategic and security cooperation with Southeast Asian countries. And what I mean by strategic and security emphasis is the government got 3 different areas: maritime security and cyber security, as well as defense industry. But definitely there are other issues like human security, non-traditional security issues. Non-traditional security issues covers a whole range of cooperation agenda. So, I mean, at the end of Moon Jae-in government, and at the end of New Southern policy, there was a lot of questions. There were a lot of questions from Southeast Asian counterparts that what would be the fate of New Southern policy, and would it be the end of New Southern policy or Korea's commitment into Southeast Asia? But I assure you that the KASI, the Korea ASEAN Solidarity Initiative, inherited almost all cooperation items from the New Southern policy with new title and new emphasis on security and strategic cooperation. So there's a continuity between NSP and CASI.
Wonderful. So I hope that at the upcoming summit, ASEAN Korea Summit, more concrete outcomes would be expected.
Yep.
Because it is just initiative, but we need action plans and money, funding.
And already, Korean government announced that it will increase money. Korea-ASEAN Cooperation Fund, ODA, Korea Mekong Fund, and also there's another one, Korea Maritime Southeast Asia Cooperation Fund, or you can say Korea BIMP IAGA Cooperation Fund. So all increase and got more resource for cooperation. And what is more, next year in 2024, we will celebrate the 35th anniversary of Korea-ASEAN partnership, Korea-ASEAN making formal ties. And we used to have a special summit in Korea to commemorate 20th, 25th, and 30th anniversary. But this time, instead of summit, I believe we will sign a statement called ASEAN Korea Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. And the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership statement will supplemented by its own work plan of work. And you will see a lot of details of cooperation in CSP work plan coming up next year.
Mm-hmm. Actually, Cambodia have proposed to Republic of Korea that we should advance our bilateral relations to a comprehensive strategic partnership.
Yep.
You have any insight from the Korean government? Will it support this Cambodia proposal to upgrade our relationship
Between Cambodia and South
Korea? Yeah,
okay.
Cambodia and South Korea.
I don't know. I'm not a part of the government, but as far as I know, the guys in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are working on that. But there are other issues, bigger issues like what I just mentioned. The Korea ASEAN, it's 10 countries ASEAN, or you can say 11 countries. Korea ASEAN CSP. So probably at the moment, Korea ASEAN CSP it's got more highlight than the Korea Cambodia CSP. So let's wait and see what happens.
Yes, from a Cambodian side, so far we have two. One is with China, signed in 2010, and then 3 years later with Japan as a comprehensive strategic partnership. And so we would like to have one more with Republic of Korea. Because
when I get back to Seoul, I will check with my friends in the Ministry of
Yes, please try to convey the message that we are willing to push it forward.
Okay.
Because it would be a special. Because anyway, in diplomacy, bilateral relation also counts a lot.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yes.
The multilateral start from bilateral. So yeah.
Yes. So thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for giving us this insight. And I think we have learned a lot from you, this kind of lecture and our conversation. And let's talk more. And I wish you have a good time in Phnom Penh. And I try to meet you here in Phnom Penh. I will, try to understand further your perspective, because some leader, from parliamentary leader, the speaker of the National Assembly of your country will visit Cambodia early next month. So that would be a big milestone actually in our bilateral relationship, and it would be the first kind of a parliamentary leader to visit Cambodia after the new parliament and the new government was formed about 2 weeks ago, recently. So thank you very much, Dr. Lee, and have a pleasant stay, and looking forward to catch up with you in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.